Hi, Brock here. In this video, we're going to cover how to turn on and off the mouse cursor and how to make it so that our mouse can stop controlling the camera and then start controlling the camera again. We're also going to talk about some of the Unity versus Unreal terms and get into some of the different things that I've learned. Now, I've seen a lot of different FAQs where people had similar problems that I had, and I try to address those as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll get started by going ahead and starting from scratch. We're going to go to games, and I'm going to start with one of the starter projects. Now, it doesn't really matter which one of these that you start with. I'm going to just do the third person. I'm going to leave it on blueprint, and I'm going to leave it with the starter content. I'm going to call this mouse lock. Whatever makes sense for you. Now that we have our new project, let's see how the mouse cursor works by default. So we'll go ahead and just play right in the viewport. And you'll notice that there was a little message up top that said that you actually have to click in order to start controlling it. And then there's a comment about doing Shift F1 to get out of that. I'm going to click in it again. You can see this is the starter. If I use my controls, I can move the character around. If I move the mouse, it moves the camera. Okay. If I hit the Shift F1, I can get out of that. I'm no longer controlling the camera. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'm going to go ahead and try this in a standalone game mode, because this is going to give us more like of what the real game will end up doing. So as soon as the game starts, I'm moving my mouse. Again, I can run around. But if I hit Shift F1, I can't get out. I actually have to hit Windows key to get out and close this. If we wanted another way to get out of that besides hitting the window key, we'd have to actually make that a key. But that's not what we're focusing on in this video. Instead, let's go check out our settings in our project. And we're going to scroll down to engine and then input. And right now we don't care about bindings. We are going to close that. We're going to look at the viewport properties. So the default settings here are to capture mouse on launch, that the capture mode is capture permanently, including the initial mouse down, and to lock on capture. Now, if you work in Unity, you're used to locking the mouse cursor, which would put the cursor right in the middle of the screen at all times. And then you would control visually showing the cursor or not showing the cursor. Now, that's not exactly what lock means here. Instead, let's go ahead and just visually demonstrate what it means. I'm going to turn off capture. So that way we can get a better idea of what locking means. I'm going to let it say lock always. I'm going to drag this just a little bit here. And we can go ahead, we can click this and have it start in the standalone. always a good idea to at least test every once in a while in your standalone to make sure that it's working the way you expect. Now I'm moving my mouse around, but we visually can't see it, and nothing's happening on here. And that's because we turned capture off. So it is not capturing any of our mouse location information. All right, I'm going to get out of that. And I'm going to click on selected viewport. And here, if I try to move my mouse, I have not clicked on the viewport yet. If I try to move my mouse up or to the right or down, I can't go anywhere outside the viewport. So that's that lock always, is it's keeping me within these bounds. Now, if I click in the game, you don't see my mouse anymore until you can see when I hover. The reason why I left the settings here is so that we could briefly see the mouse as I hover into it. But essentially the point is, when we're in the game, our mouse is locked inside these bounds still, but we can't see them. So let's go ahead and see if we can't resolve that first part, just showing the mouse. We're going to leave these settings on here for now. And so let's go ahead and try to figure out how to show the mouse. If we come up to our little blueprints icon and we come down here to project settings, we can see that the player controller is set to this one. If we hit edit, what this is going to do is open up the actual player controller file that is in the Unreal Engine framework. Now, we don't want to actually change this file. We're just looking in here to see what's available. If I look up mouse, cursor, we can see this first one right here, whether the mouse cursor should be displayed. And we see something here that's very important. It says it can be edited anywhere, that blueprints can read and write it. So that's useful information. Now, you might think, well, ideally, I should just be able to change this information right here. Well, we wouldn't want to change it there, but we could make our own controller. So let's try that out. So if we come up to game mode, go to player controller, let's go to create player controller. We could call it new player controller, or maybe since we named this game mouse lock, let's call it mouse lock player controller. That way it's something that we made. We could also have added, probably should have added a BP underscore in front of it, so that way it's easy for us to find our own personal blueprints that we create. That being said, if we look over here, we now see, okay, show mouse cursor. Well, I'm going to go ahead and check that. Now I'm going to compile. I'm going to save. I'm going to go ahead and just shrink this a little bit over here. And then I'm going to hit play. I'm going to click into the game. So I'm actually in the game. I can walk back and forth. As you can see, my mouse cursor is shown now. But, you know, I can't actually control my view anymore, which is, you know, okay, that's what we expect, right? If I click and drag, nothing's really happening. So, okay. We don't have any control over our camera now. Let's go ahead and stop that. And let's look into how we can actually control this setting whether it's a new controller we made or one that was in there by default, a blueprint. First thing we're going to do, though, is we're actually going to turn off that. So the mouse cursor is no longer being set. We're going to hit play and click in here and make sure, yep, the mouse cursor is back to not being shown. We're actually going to go that in Standalone. It's going to ask about saving some stuff. Let's just go ahead and let it save. Again, I can't see my mouse here, my mouse cursor, that is. So we're where we want to be to actually start controlling this via the blueprint. Now, if we go down here and go to just our level blueprint, the first thing we could do to control this is go ahead and do an event. And let's do event begin play. And then if we were to drag over here, and remember when we looked up in the code, it was show cursor. So if I do show cursor, it's not going to come up. Now I could uncheck this context sensitivity and see if that pulls up anything. So show cursor, right? Now it shows up, but the context thing is useful. Why didn't it show up if I turn it back on? That's because it's inside of the actual controller. So let's go ahead and do a get player controller. And we're okay with dealing with the 0 index or first index of the player controllers because we're only dealing with a first one-person game right now. Now, if we were dealing with multiple players, then we'd have to be concerned about which player controller we're modifying. But in this case, we just got the one, so index 0 works for us. Now, if I drag off of this little node and I click here and I say show cursor, well, now with the context sensitivity on, we actually have it showing up. So we'll go ahead and say set. We'll let that set to the beginning, and we'll check that. So let's just make this come down here again. Compile, save. Now, one thing to keep note when you hit save, you can no longer do undo in your blueprint. All right, so to make it a little bit easier, I'm just gonna let it start in the viewport, and I click in here, and great. I can see that it's back to showing my mouse. So let's go ahead and let's toggle this. Instead of having it just on event play, we actually want to be able to say, okay, with another key, let's turn the mouse cursor on, turn the mouse cursor off, right? Let's just go ahead and drag this down a little bit, make it a little smaller. And to make things go a little bit faster, instead of clicking on play in the standalone, I'm going to click on selected viewport. And if I click in here, we can see, okay, yep, showing the mouse cursor. But again, when I click, nothing's happening. And if you recall, we changed the project settings. So we're going to exit out of here, and we're going to go to edit, go into project settings. We're going to go back to input. And here, we're going to start capturing the information. And we're going to do it on that initial mouse click. So again, this is essentially, we're just going to go ahead and let it be lock on capture, all of this back to like the settings that it would have been at by default. All right. Now, when I click play, and I click into the game, you can see my cursor is visible. If I click and drag, now I'm controlling the view. Now, it doesn't appear to be locking. Now, if I click and move, it is locking. So these are some different settings you'll have to play around with. Let's actually try it out in the standalone game mode. So this, you'll see it's capturing right away. And now that I clicked into it, now it's not. If I click and drag, now it's controlling or capturing our mouse. But again, I can scroll out of here. So if we go back to the project settings, we go to input, we could change this to always lock. To me, that makes the most sense. I personally don't like when I'm in a game and it lets me like mouse off onto something else. Personal preference, maybe. Again, this is something you can choose what to do. This is what I'm going to have it do, is always lock. So now let's go ahead and start that. All right, I haven't clicked on the game yet, but I'm locked. I click in the game. Okay, it stops capturing, and I'm still locked. Okay. Again, locking in Unreal is talking about locking where your mouse can go. If it can go outside the viewport, and capturing is talking about really capturing the mouse position data to control your camera. All right, we're going to get out of there. Now let's look into actually toggling this show mouse on and off and see what results we get from that. So what we can go ahead and do is kill this begin play event, because we actually want to control it with another key. Now, the quick and dirty way is to say, okay, keyboard, and pick, all one of the different keys. In my particular case, I want to use caps lock, so I could just look up caps lock. I could grab it, or the proper way would actually be to go to edit, project settings, right back into our engine input, and then opening up bindings. Under action mappings, we'd want to create a new one. So under this new one, we would call it toggle mouse control, what I'm going to call it. It could be really whatever makes sense for you. I'm trying not to use terms that could be confusing. And then I'm going to go under keyboard, and I'm going to do caps lock is what I'm going to do. Now, the reason why you would want to do this is so that you can actually have multiple bindings. So under this particular event, if I hit plus, I click over here and go to like gamepad, I could make it the up button, and you can see now both caps lock or gamepad will do this particular event. If we open up like the jump, for example, we can see spacebar and the face button bottom does that for our game. So we'll go ahead and I'll remove that because it's not really important for us right now. If you were trying to just test and not necessarily make an event that's going to be a commonly used thing, sure, you could do it the way of just looking for the key. That being said, though, we've made the event, so let's take a look for it. So toggle mouse control. So we have our input action now. And since we have the game set up so that we do not have a mouse pressed, rather we do not have the mouse cursor showing, we'd want that our pressed one is going to toggle that on and off. We'll go in here and look for flip-flop. We'll go ahead and say press, we'll do our flip-flop, and we'll say that first one, A, will be showing it. Because if it's off initially, then the first time you toggle this, you'd want to be toggling it on. So then if we just go ahead and copy this first set and we turn it off, make sure that we're looking at that player controller, the same one, and we can go to this. Now let's compile, let's save, and let's test this. So game starts, and I'm moving my mouse. You can control the character, and then I hit caps lock, and well, we see our mouse. The game is still following. That's not the same behavior we had before. If I untoggle it, well, it goes back to not being shown. So this essentially is showing the mouse and not showing the mouse cursor. But it's not disabling and enabling our control of the camera. Not essentially in Unity terms, it's not locking and unlocking our mouse cursor. So let's go ahead and resolve that. So now that things are starting to get a little messy on us here, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this up here. We can scroll in a little bit. Close this. All right. So let's go ahead and right click on here and let's just say straighten all the pin connections. We'll do that. Straighten all pin connections. Not quite. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and mouse off to here. Now, one of the things we have to remember is we turn on and off our capture mode. So what if we messed with that? So if we look up capture mode, so set viewport mouse capture mode, great. So no capture, that's what we want. Or showing the mouse, we don't want it to be captured anymore. Let's paste this here. And then this time set it back to what, set it back to what the game settings were initially set to, which is to capture it permanently, including that initial mouse down. So if we go ahead and compile, save, switch back over here, I'm just going to go ahead and let it play in viewport so it goes a little bit faster. and I click into the game and I do a caps lock, if I move the mouse, well, that didn't seem to change anything. But hold on, if I click again, well, now it's working. So I'll hit caps lock again. Well, I don't see my mouse, but as I move the mouse, the control's not back. But if we click again, well, now it is. So essentially, it's working, but it's almost delayed. So let's fix that. So this here, we want to go ahead and actually come into here, and we're going to pull off the controller, and essentially want to tell the controller, you know what? Ignore our look input. Just completely ignore it. And we want that to happen once we've changed the game mode. Now, you might think, okay, if we're ignoring it, we want to make sure we do this checkbox. You'd probably think we just copy this and make that checkbox be off. But instead, what we can do is if we drag off there again, when we look up ignore, we can reset ignore lookup. Look input. Now, things are starting to get messy on us again, so let's just kind of make this clean a little bit by double clicking on these and dragging them. That way we're organizing things a little bit better. All right, that seems pretty decent. All right, let's compile, let's save, and then let's play, right? So I look around, and then I hit caps lock, and I re-hit caps lock. It seems to be working correctly. But let's think about an actual real-world situation. In this mode, I'm going to want to click on something. So let me click, and then hit caps again. And now, well, it's not responding. If I click, well, now it is. So the untoggle basically is working. So that works the way we'd want to right away. Let's go back to our blueprint and figure out why. So essentially, we're saying ignore the look input. Well, since resetting it here doesn't seem to be working, maybe it's our middle part that's wrong. So let's go ahead and kill this and just let it go straight to ignore and reset. Let's see how that works. So we'll compile, save, play. Again, we'll click into the viewport, move around, caps lock. That seems to be working. Hit caps lock again. That works, but remember we didn't click, so let's click around. And nope, we still have to click. So click, and when I toggle back and I'm moving the mouse, it's not doing anything. I have to click in order for it to start picking it up. So what might be happening here? Well, since showing the mouse cursor and taking away the look input, it could be essentially triggering Unreal into thinking we're in a different mode. So let's try to set our controller's mode again. We're going to drag from the player controller. Let's look for game. mode. And let's go ahead and set input mode game only. And we're going to connect this to this and then this to this. We'll just make that straight there, and then we'll organize this a little more again. Dragging that up. That gives us a little bit better of a look there. So let's compile that, save, play. All right. So again, moving around, caps locks again, that's fine. So we'll do caps lock, click, and then caps lock, and there we go. Now we have it. So we can get our mouse, we can click around, we can caps again, so forth. All right. Now, don't forget though to test in a standalone game mode. So we'll go in here and we'll do caps lock. You can see the mouse, caps lock again, make sure we're clicking. All right, fine as dandy. After stressing the importance of testing, I went ahead and did one more use case that, you know, I'll get into doing more tutorial work on. But essentially, I went ahead and made a button widget, added it to the viewport, and then on the actual widget itself, I went ahead and have it when it's clicked of it just saying hello world. So again, we're going to go ahead and standalone game test. And control, looking good, running around. I'll hit caps lock. Now I can click on here. Okay. And I can go back into this mode. I go back up here. I can click. One thing that I'm noticing right here is the hover state isn't working. Okay. So again, the importance of testing. Now, you might think, okay, since we set this to input mode game only, that maybe we should say input mode. Maybe we do UI only, right? So that UI mode only. You might think this is the solution. Let's go ahead and try it out. Save, compile that. What you'll notice here is, well, this seems to work. Now we have a hover state right away. I can't toggle back. Can't toggle back. And that's because now it's only accepting essentially inputs from the UI. So that's not what we want. Instead, what we want is both. So UI and game mode. So if we set that up, boop, bitty, boop, into here, and we'll just make that like so. We're wanting to show it. I'm going ahead and saying, yeah, don't hide the cursor. Also keeping our always lock mode. Now we could, if we wanted to have this always focus to a certain widget, we could do that. I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm just going to let it show the mouse. So let's compile, save, and hit play. Now, caps lock, and we get that hover right away. We can click and then caps lock again, bam, now we got it. So again, really important to test and keep testing, and then also making sure you're testing in the outside of the actual editor itself. That being said, let's try it out in the viewport. So tab, click, click, back in it. All right, everything is working as expected. So let me pull that up one last time. So let's recap what we did. Now, on this, just adding that widget, we'll ignore that. Let's grab this together. Let's maybe even clean it up a little bit more. Let's go ahead and move these up. There we go. All right. So we can grab all of this and put a comment on it. And this is doing a few things, right? We're cap lock, show slash hide toggle mouse cursor toggle, right? Toggle, there we go. While disabling camera control from mouse movement. All right, so now that we named it and everything, let's just walk through it one more time. I'm going to make this big. So we made a input action. We made a toggle to flip back and forth between each time somebody inputs that action. We are making a change on the first player's controller. The first thing we're doing is showing or hiding the mouse. And then the next thing we're doing is allowing or disallowing the inputs from either the UI itself and or the player's controls, or just the player's controls. And then the last thing here is basically saying we're ignoring the look input and then resetting the look input. All right. I hope this video has been helpful. I know it took me a while to get it actually working the way that I expected. It took me a lot of trial and error, a lot of looking up online, and I honestly still never found this answer online. So hopefully this helps you. At the same time, please, if you know of a different way, a better way to do this, comment, let me know. I couldn't find anything online about it. At least not that was a clear-cut answer that's simple like this. So I'm always excited to learn more things, and hopefully you've been able to learn something too. And please like, subscribe, comment, share, all that jazz. Till next time, toodles.